is I, Wacky Anime What If, and I'm here to present you with What If Belle was betrayed and met Alastor? Okay, so the way this is going to work out is Alastor has the ability to go, which she's the only Hazbin Hotel character and Hell of a Boss character, or any of them that has the ability, which also this is made, that was made by Viveziepop, I think. Yeah, Viveziepop. Please watch them. Watch it from there, okay? Only saying this so I don't have to put it in the description. I'm still going to put it there, but I'm going to say I do not own Hazbin Hotel or Hell of a Boss, so if I mention the characters, go to Viveziepop and watch it. Anyway, I'm going to get that out of the way. So, get into the what if. Alright, so Alastor has the unique ability to go into other worlds, but he can only do it once a millennium. And he can't re-enter that world unless he did a contract with someone to do so. So he's scrolling through the worlds, because it's already a millennium in Hazbin Hotel, and he ends up seeing a certain world he hasn't visited yet. So he's about to make plans to go there. Now we're going to switch to perspectives from Belle, okay? Belle is only like a few months in the Hestia Familia. The Minotaur attack didn't happen yet. So, yeah, Belle is, just going about his day, normal, going to the dungeons, getting, like, really low-level monsters. He's still struggling with them, too. But he's getting a little bit better. And Hestia notices the improvement, but is thinking it's way too slow. And she isn't the Hestia from canon, okay? She does not really care for Belle, but she does at the same time. She cares for one thing, that's the money. And the only reason why Belle is in her Familia in the first place, why Hestia let him in, is because she was desperate. And she needed money, which Belle was providing. So every time that Belle would enter the church, she put on a fake smile, and pretend like she was happy to see him, and, be a little flirtatious with him. Which Belle would always, buy into this, and think that, he had a really good goddess. I was very happy because he felt like he had someone special. But and the cruel reality would sink in a few months later. So a few months of this routine of him going to the dungeon, fighting low-level monsters, getting the cores, exchanging them, going back to Hestia, them hanging out, and her with a fake facade, would continue for about 3 more months, okay? So it's been 6 months in general since he's been there. And there's a new Familia member that they added in, that, Hestia added in, and it's a level 5, just so you know. A level 5 Familiar member. And this level 5, I'm going to go ahead and call him Jake, okay? Jake doesn't really, mind Belle. He doesn't see him as an obstacle, or a threat, because he's trying to go after Hestia, because he likes Hestia. A lot, actually. And they actively flirt together, but honestly, when Belle sees that they're flirting and everything, he feels a little heartbroken, but then he's like, well, we can just be friends, I guess. I mean, Hestia probably already chose him, so I'm perfectly fine with it. I mean, I'm just happy I'm their friend. I'm their friends. Which, yeah, Jake does get along with Belle, though. But not too much. But he gets in, a sort of friendship with him. They hang out sometimes, they, play some pool, which pool was invented in Danmachi. I'm gonna say it was invented. They play pool, poker, they play all that stuff together. They also do some silly stuff along the lines. And, yeah, it's been 1 more month, so 7 months in total since Belle was in Hestia Familia. And they, hung out for a good while. And, yeah, Hestia is already thinking, I'm making a lot more money with Jake, so now I can dump Belle out of my Familia. But she's also thinking about the bad publicity she would get if she just abandoned her first Familia member in a while. So she ends up thinking, maybe if I stage his death. Which, just so you know, she does not voice this out to Jake. Because of one reason. Jake, at this point, sees Belle as more of like a little brother and a friend. So Jake is like, I'm not going to do that to my homie, is what she literally thinks. So when Belle, comes into the church, goes to his own little separate room, and sleeps, Hestia, talks to Jake and says, we should probably remove him. He's very weak. He hasn't made too much progress. Which Jake says, no, he has made progress. It's just some people are slower than others to make progress. You can't blame it over him. I mean, it's not like he doesn't want to make progress. Everyone does. And he's actively trying effort. Which Hestia is pissed that he's offending him. And then Jake says, also, I don't think I haven't noticed what you're trying to do. You're trying to kick him out just because you don't think that he's going to attract as much money. And actually, I liked you before, but now that I think about it, you're more greedy than I thought. Honestly, I might just leave your Familia if you continuously do this. Which, she ends up, stopping the conversation and says, how about we just go to bed then? So they're about to go to bed, and Hestia, says, wait, I forgot something in the kitchen. So she goes into the kitchen, makes a sandwich, eats the sandwich, makes one for Jake, and makes one for Belle. But the thing is, she sprinkles something in Belle's, which you'll find out about what it is later. So she literally knocks on Belle's door and says, Belle, I made you a sandwich. Which Belle just opens the door, because he was exercising. Like, he was asleep, but he couldn't sleep too well. So he just woke up in the middle of the night and just started exercising, because he wanted to increase his strength as much as possible to help his Familia. So he opened the door, and he was, sweating, and Hestia saw how ripped Belle was pretty impressed, actually, and was thinking, maybe I shouldn't, get rid of him. He could become a potential asset later on. And then before she's, second-guessing herself, Belle says, oh, thanks for the sandwich. He grabs the sandwich and the plate and starts eating it, which Hestia is like, I can't turn back now, I guess, in her mind. So she just walks away and says, good night, Belle. And sees a sly grin on her face and was like, oh, well, I guess she must have had a good day, I guess, is what Belle says and thinks. So he's really perky, ate the sandwich, went to bed, but as soon as he ate the sandwich, he felt a little weaker, but he just ignored this. It wasn't that big of a difference. So Hestia goes into her room, which Jake does sleep in her room, because there wasn't enough rooms. And the thing is, Jake wanted Belle to have his own room because Hestia literally hates his guts, mostly. But just doesn't show it on the outside. Or to Belle. But Jake knows that Hestia hates his guts. So that's the reason why Belle has a separate room. So, yeah, Jake literally sees her with a sandwich, like a plate and a sandwich. And she says, I made a sandwich for you. Just hands Jake the sandwich. Jake, inspects it first, because she honestly thinks that Hestia would probably poison them one day. And is very cautious, unlike Belle. The thing is, he eats a sandwich, and he's just, he actually thinks it tastes pretty good. So he just eats the sandwich, they lay down, they go to sleep. The next morning, let me just tell you what happens. Next morning, Jake gets up, notices that Belle isn't up in the morning, like he usually is. And he, looks around the, church, and then decides to just knock on his door. Once he knocks on Belle's door, there's no response. And then, he just opens the door and says, Belle, I'm coming in. I'm worried. You haven't opened the door, and it's been an hour. I know you're not a heavy sleeper. As soon as he opens the door, he is shocked, because Belle literally has completely dark circles. His veins are popping out of him. He's having a hard time breathing, and he looks like he's almost in a coma-like state, but he was just in a deep sleep. And then Jake is in shock and was wondering if Hestia had anything to do with this, but then also heard that there was a certain sickness that did this. And it was a very expensive item to, cure this sickness. So Jake felt motivated. He immediately went towards him, gets actual ice packet, put it on Bel's head, put some buckets under his bed so that the sweat would just go through into the buckets. Literally removed the cover because he was burning up. And then he literally was like, I'll be back, Belle. I have to go to the dungeons. I have to get enough money so I can cure you. And just so you know, Jake is panicked and trembling in his voice because his best friend, Belle Cranel, is currently dying. Because when he feels his pulse, it is very low. It feels like it's still beating, like, strongly, but it just stops sometimes. And then it just beats again. It's completely stopping and going, which is an awful state to be in. Jake, starts running, decides to, run outside the actual church, and runs all the way to where the dungeon is. Goes up to the Adventurer Guild in a panic, and they're wondering what happened, because Jake is very stressed out and, has a face that says that he's concerned and angry at the same time. And then Jake runs up to Aina and said, I need to get any of the quests that you have. I have to get as much money as possible. Which Aina is wondering why he needs that much money. He just openly says, why you need so many quests exactly? Why you need a lot of money? Then he says, Belle is extremely sick. He has the Lotus virus. And once he says that, everyone's heart drops. Because they know Jake and Belle's relationship. They're like brothers. They're inseparable. And, he's just in full-on panic mode. He looks like he's about to have a panic attack or a stroke at any moment. And he literally just demands for the quests. Which, Aina is just in shock because Belle was so cheerful and everything yesterday. How could he have gotten it? But she obliges Jake and gives him the quest. Jake goes down into the dungeon and is doing the quest. Now we're going to go to the perspective of Belle. Belle is in intense pain. He's unconscious. He's in a dreamlike state. He's constantly bleeding on the outside now. Which, Hestia is still in the church, and Hestia, goes into Belle's room, sees Belle, and honestly, she wanted to get rid of Belle, yes, but she didn't want to see him in so much pain. She sees him in consistent pain, him literally screaming in pain, his veins popping out, blood coming from his eyes, his mouth, his ears, everything, the intense screaming. And when Hestia just looks even closer, and the veins are getting darker and darker, she goes up to his chest, puts her ear towards it, and hears the heartbeat accelerating and stopping, accelerating, stopping, then slowing down. And she's in horror that one thing that she did caused all this. And she started thinking that she really was greedy, that she really regrets doing this. She starts looking at Belle's face and thinks back about all the kindness that he showed, and she starts tearing up and crying. And then she's literally on Belle's chest crying and saying, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. Which Belle, even though he's unconscious, he's in his mindscape, he's in a dark room. He's literally just hearing her voice, saying, I didn't mean to. And he's hearing the voice, and she continues saying everything that's on her mind. She says, but I saw that you were so useless, so pathetic. that I honestly just thought that you would never make enough money to support me or my Familia. I thought you were just dead weight. I thought that if I got rid of you, I just wouldn't care, but for some reason, I'm starting to. I'm actually starting to care for you. I didn't think this was possible for me to care for someone so weak and feeble like you. Someone who can't even go to the first 3 floors without being injured. And Belle's hearing every word, and he is hurt. And she says, I didn't mean to put the poison in your sandwich yesterday and cause you this much pain. Which Belle, on the inside in the mindscape, is literally just furious, enraged, in despair, in sorrow, in grief, and just thinking that he's so stupid he couldn't have seen all the signs that she hated him, despised his very existence. He was so angry. But the thing is, all this anger, he didn't have anywhere to direct it at. He can't move his body, he can't wake up. He's just stuck. He's not dead, but he's not alive. He's in a consistent state of pain. And Belle is just in a state of confusion also about why did this have to happen to me? He starts screaming this in his head. Nothing comes out on the outside. Hestia is just crying and then gets up and about to walk outside of Belle's room and says, for what it's for, I'm very sorry that you were so useless, that I had to do this though. She's reassuring herself and just walks outside of Belle's door, closes the door, just walks outside the church and just walks away thinking to herself about what she had just done. And Belle was literally just enraged in his mental state. The rage is showing outside now. And just so you know, Alastor has just decided we're going to switch to Alastor's perspective. He's in Hazbin Hotel, and he tells everyone, I've decided to go to another world. Well, to the human world, actually. He disguises the human world because no one knows he can go to other worlds. They don't know this. So, yeah, they're like, okay, I guess so. You didn't really have to inform us that much, Al. And Angel Dust says, see you, Strawberry Pimp. And literally, Al says, you know, I've never had the displeasure of meeting someone so vulgar. And just pops out of Hazbin Hotel. And Angel Dust is just smirking. And yeah, Al literally just teleports into the Danmachi world. Legit, like in the middle of the city that, you know, Belle's in. I forgot the name of it. I'll look it up later. I'm so sorry about that. But anyway, he's in the middle, and he's just sensing the emotions in the air and sensing all this despair, anger, and rage. And Alastor is just livid right now. He's like, this is the best choice I could ever pick to visit for vacation. What he thought was vacation, and he knew that he could view everyone, and no one can really see him because he's invisible. He turned himself invisible. So he just likes to wander around, which he went to usually different worlds, wandered around, and, you know, it literally spectated other people just to see their lives. So Alastor senses a lot of hatred, anger, a little hint of confusion, and betrayal. And he says, this aroma, I must seek it out. So he continues walking down the street, which people are feeling malevolent energy. They're all sweating bullets, but they don't know why. Everywhere that he walks, people are sweating, panicking. Some of them even almost have panic attacks. Some of the elderly just pass out and die. And they don't really know why. They think it's like a pandemic or something. Which, you know, Alastor's chuckling hearing that, and says, my own aura can do this. I should tone it down a bit, though. So Alastor just makes the ominous aura disappear. Because they could sense the ominous aura, they just didn't know where it was coming from. There was no one there. So Alastor started walking the streets, started walking past Momia's restaurant. Momia feels like she was having a heart attack, because she could still somehow sense the ominous presence, which was pretty shocking. So, yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and tell you this. Well, he was shocked, okay? Very shocked. And very angry. Because all that he saw was happiness, mostly, in the area he was walking towards, and he was wondering where this bear came from. Then he saw this old abandoned church and saw all the aura of hatred, anger, confusion, betrayal, despair. And this made Alastor himself shiver in delight. And so he walked into the old abandoned church and saw it was super filthy. And he just said, no wonder the person here is in such despair. And then he looks at Belle's room, opens the door towards Belle's room where the source is coming from, looks at Belle and says, "You're a very pathetic one, aren't you?" And he's in pure disgust when he says this, pure disgust, and actually a lot of anger, actually, because he knows that this is not actually something that someone could have had, like no type of disease they can be born with. Someone did this to him. And I'm gonna make it to where I don't know about, like, Hazbin Hotel, like how Alastor, died. But I'm gonna say that Alastor was poisoned. Okay? He was poisoned by someone he trusted. That's how he died. He was a serial killer who was poisoned by the one person he trusted. Okay, that's it. Now we're gonna go back into it. So Al was having flashbacks about that, and Al was like, the thing is, I feel bad because I can find my revenge. The guy died and didn't go to hell. But you can enact your revenge. So he walked closer towards Belle and put his hand right on Belle and entered his mindscape. And Belle in his mindscape is in super rage, anger, hatred, despair, sadness. And then Alastor just pops into existence in front of him and says, "Hello there!" And then Belle's just like, "Holy shit, what is that?" And just fucking backs up and falls down and is like, "What the fuck is that?" And then Alastor laughs in amusement and says, "From all that hatred and all that despair, I'm surprised that you can be shocked by this. Maybe you've gone insane. Maybe your sanity's at the brink. Who knows?" And he's literally laughing and smiling. And Belle's like, "I don't need someone in a suit that looks like a deer laughing at me after what happened." And then Alastor says, "May I see what happened?" And then Belle says, "How would you see exactly?" He says, "I will go through your memories." And Belle's like, "I prefer if you don't." And then he just grabs him on the head and just says, "I think I will go through them. I don't exactly like being told no." So Alastor just goes through his memories, and Alastor is in fucking fury and raged. But then calms down, which, when Belle felt that aura, felt like his very soul was gonna get crushed, which it was. Belle's soul was slightly getting crushed under Alastor's presence. And just Alastor's in the outside world is just, he has his hand on Belle's head. His actual mindscape is inside of his mental is inside of him. Mental picture of him is inside of Belle. Essentially his soul. So, yeah, Alastor tells Belle, "How about this? You make a deal with me, and I will give you my power. I will make you my successor in this world. Because I always wanted a successor, and you seem like you're probably from the same cloth as me. Well, not exactly, but similar. So what do you say?" And then Belle said, "I would say yes, but the thing is, I don't exactly think that this is for free. And Alastor says, oh, you're very smart. Well, it's not for free, per se. There is a cost. Usually I would ask for a soul, but how about this? We make the deal, and I'll tell you what I want. And then Belle's like, so I won't die, will I? He's like, no, no, no. Whatever you are poisoned with will be cured. The only thing is, you will die. You'll come back as a demon, though, and you'll be bound to Danmachi world. Basically, your body will transform after your death, about 24 hours after. Which, Belle smiles and says, I have the perfect revenge plan then, and does a psychotic laugh, which Alastor is shivering from the laugh, and not shivering in fear, but excitement, because he can see a wonderful picture show, wonderful performance, and Belle is at the front stage, and he wants to see every minute of this performance. So Al is about to extend his hand. A fucking green fire comes out of his hand, and a green fire surrounds Belle and Alastor. And Belle has no fear, stands up, and is about to grab Alastor's hand and make the deal. But then he says, so, before I shake your hand, may I at least know your name? And then Alastor says, my name is Alastor. A pleasure to meet you, Belle. And Belle's like, I would ask how you knew my name, but you went through my mind. Of course you would. So they shake hands. Alastor states what he wants. Alastor just wants one little thing. I want the freedom to pop by into your world whenever I please. Which, by making a contract with Belle, that was already accomplished. He could just pop into the Danmachi world as long as Belle's alive. Which, literally, Alastor says, I gave you one extra thing. I gave you immortality in the age-wise, so you'll really never age. Enjoy that. Which, Belle was smiling. And then, everything stopped. Alastor exited the mindscape, and Belle, his heartbeat stopped. Belle has died. But he will come back in 24 hours. And Alastor removes his hand off of Belle, and walks out of the church, and is laughing out loud, saying, I have found the perfect stage, a wonderful performance. And unlike usual, I won't take the main role. I'll just play the support. I'll be in the sidelines watching, and I'll see him plunge his enemies into the depths of despair. Which Alastor is just smiling and is very happy, and this poofs out of existence right in front of the church. And there's one person that was watching Alastor, but they left. And I won't tell you who it is currently in this part. So, yeah. After Alastor poofed, we're going to go to Jake's perspective. Jake is still in the dungeon. He's literally on the 25th floor, which is where the Goliath is. He's wanting to fight the Goliath so he can get enough to... Because he already has like 500 to 800 cores in his bag. And he wants to fight the Goliath to get enough to save Belle. He runs up to where the Goliath is and says, I have to take it out. I need to. And Jake is very strong, a level 5 adventurer. But soloing a Goliath is a little bit out of his range. Normally level 5 adventurers would be able to do this. But he's more of a, more of a tank. He tanks more blows than actually deals more. So, he's fighting the Goliath. The Goliath literally looks at him. As soon as he sees him, in the start of the fight, just fucking punches Jake. Jake flies into the wall of the dungeon and just coughs up blood and says, I was not expecting you to be this fucking strong. mainly because he's had parties to deal with it. It was like nothing to him. But by himself, out of desperation, coming down there by himself, he thought would be the worst mistake. So he gets out of the wall, pulls himself out of the wall, and says, "You want to dance? Let's dance, you freak." And the Goliath literally just starts rushing towards him and punches the ground with both hands, just does a grand ground slam. And then the rocks literally spike upwards, and they're literally hitting into Jake. They're pummeling into him. All these rock fragments are pummeling into him. They're digging into his skin. And Jake is screaming in pain, but he's like, "I gotta fight through the pain. Gotta do it for my little bro. Gotta do it." So he just rushes through the hail of rocks that are flying in the air from his massive smash. And Jake sees the arm heading towards him, about to punch him. He pulls up his shield, which he has a shield and sword, just so you know, and he has some decent armor. So Jake pulls up his actual armor, and once the Goliath punches the armor, Jake holds back with all of his strength and manages to not go flying, but holds the Goliath's hand, like, in front of his shield, and then he pulls out his sword from the back and just chops it off. And the Goliath screams and decides, "I'm gonna do a fucking laser beam at you." He's like, "I'm using special beam cannon for my mouth, my dude." And yeah, Jake seeing this is like, "Oh fuck." And then as soon as he says that, laser beams fire straight towards Jake. Jake blocks it with his shield. It shatters his shield, shatters his arm, and he goes flying back into the dungeon wall that he had just got out of. And it just gets pressed into it. And he realizes that some of his ribs are fucking broken right now. And he's coughing up blood madly. He's not in the right frame of mind to fight the Goliath. The Goliath is just slowly regenerating. His arm is like, yeah, that didn't really do much. And just so you know, Jake is infuriated. And he has a few skills of his own. So he decides to use one, physical enhancement, which it gives him a 20% boost in attack, but it decreases his defense to 20%. Attack and speed. So he just rushes forward towards the Goliath. Goliath throws a left swing, because his right arm was chopped off, but it's regenerating. It regenerated like halfway, which, yeah, when Jake saw that left swing coming towards him, he just jumped onto the left hand, on the top of it, where the knuckles are, starts running up the hand, has his blade on the top of the knuckle when he's running, and is starting to cut Goliath's hand all the way in half, through the middle of his hand, diagonally. And yeah, the Goliath is in a lot of pain. Its right hand is already regenerated, and Jake does not know this. So Jake was rushing up towards where its head was and was like, "I'll kill you." And yeah, Jake chopped off its head. But the thing is, the Goliath already had its right hand going towards where Jake was. And Jake saw this and was like, "I'm gonna fucking die." And Jake was just slapped into another dungeon wall. This time, that slap was so fucking strong that he didn't just slap into the wall. He slapped into the ground, bounced off the ground, bumped into a wall, and just got imprinted there. Like there was a Looney Tunes imprint there. And this was not the first time it happened. This happened 5 more times when he was battling it. And Jake is almost bleeding out to death. But Jake manages to rush up towards the Goliath one last time, which the Goliath is fully healed, and is rushing towards Jake, and they're living out battle cries. And Jake literally is like, "You know what? This might be the dumbest idea, but I'm going to do it anyway." He literally puts his sword in a throwing stance. He yeets that sword, and it goes straight through into the Goliath. It goes straight through its core. And it doesn't break the core, though. And Jake is like, "I gotta go fast, son." And then he starts gently just zooming past. And then the Goliath is trying to punch him with the right hook. Yeah, all that, with the right swing, All that Jake does is jump on the hand and literally uses the momentum of the swing to propel himself forward. He jumps, goes up right towards the blade, punches the blade with his bare fist, and then makes it go straight into the crystal. And then it just fucking poofs into smoke. And the core literally just breaks into pieces. And he picks up all the cores. He starts healing himself with some healing magic. He's still, like, almost unconscious, but he has over 8,000 cores. This is including the small fragments. They're counted as mini cores. So he runs up all the way to the guild, runs up to Aina, who looks very, very, very depressed right now, and is in tears. And he says, Aina. And Aina just looks at Jake, and Jake notices that her eyes are very, very depressed. Almost looks like they're about to shatter. And Jake says, just doesn't have enough time for this, so Jake says, I'm gonna gotta go register all this. He runs up towards the counter, registers all of it, all of his cores. They give him his money, and before Aina could say anything, he runs off. He's like, I can go save Belle. I can save Belle. He runs to the pharmacist very quickly. He runs out. He goes to the left in the middle of town, starts running, and passes every store, which they're all looking at him in shock, and they're like, he doesn't know the news. And Belle, who's, like, dead already. Everyone knows this, except for Jake. Jake is constantly running, and just barges into the pharmacist's office, puts down the money and says, I need the cure for the Lotus virus. I need the cure for it. And then he's like, you know that's pretty expensive, right, kid? And Jake's like, I will pay anything. And he pays 1,000,000 vowels, which the shop owner was about to say it was going to be like 700,000 vowels, but he just said 1,000,000, just hand it to me. So the pharmacist just hands it to him. He starts running out, and the pharmacist thinks that he looks familiar. And Jake runs all the way to the Hestia Familia, runs all the way to the abandoned church, barges open the door, runs to where Belle's room is, opens the door, and sees Hestia in Belle's room. And Hestia says, Jake, which Jake is pissed seeing Hestia, and says, were you the one that did this to him? It doesn't matter because I have the cure to him. I'll find out myself. And then Hestia's like, I'm afraid that you won't be able to. Belle's already dead, Jake. And Jake just feels his heart shatter. He's like, they're just more of your lies. And Jake sees Belle on the bed, runs up towards Belle, and says, they're lies. All I gotta do is just feed you the cure. You'll wake up, won't you? And he looks like he's in tears. And Hestia sees this and feels very, very bad. And says, he passed away. And Jake screams out and says, get the fuck out of this room. You never even liked him. Why are you even here? Why would you check up on him? That just makes you more suspicious. And he screams this on the top of his lungs. And Hestia just knows when to go out, so she goes out of the room. A little depressed, but then in the back of her mind thinks the hindrance is gone, closes the door, and Jake is just right next to Belle's corpse, trying to feed him the medicine, desperately hoping he'll somehow open his eyes again. Have that goofy smile he always had. But no. He just felt lonely. He started crying on top of Belle, saying, you are my only friend, don't leave me. And Belle just had no response. Jake literally was in anguish, in despair, hatred. He didn't know how to feel, because whenever he was crying on Belle, he could just hear his lifeless heart. He could hear nothing, just complete silence, and His hands were cold. His eyes, when he looked into his eyes, they were just dead. So Jake just closed his eyes. After a few hours of crying, picked up Belle's corpse, opened the door, looked at Hestia with disgust, walked out of the church, and made a coffin. Laid Belle in the grass, made a coffin for Belle, and placed Belle in the coffin, took his body away from the city, because he figured Belle wouldn't want to be near any of this mess, anywhere that's near Hestia. He takes off with the coffin, goes a few miles away from the city, and buries him. It was a few days' trip. It was about 4 days' trip where he was going. He was carrying Belle the entire way, didn't sleep. He just didn't care for himself anymore. Something broke inside of Jake. Jake sees this one lonely tree with this entire grassland and says, I think this would be a wonderful spot. Buries him under the tree. Buries him beside the tree. And places a tombstone in front of it, saying, "Here lies Belle Crannel, the best friend of Jake and the brother of Jake." And Jake just can't help but to break down in front of the grave. Just breaks down, cries, almost the entire night, but then leaves. But the next day, Belle, who is in his coffin, wakes up, punches through his coffin, punches through the ground, and just crawls out of his grave and says, "I'm gonna get my revenge." And his red eyes were even more red, but they had the flames of hatred inside of him. Inside of his eyes, you could see the flames. And his eyes just said, "If you get in my way, you will be destroyed. I will show no mercy." That is the look that Belle had in his eyes when he got out of his grave. But then he looked at his gravestone and said, "That must have been Jake. Considering Hestia wouldn't have the, courtesy to bury me, even if she was the one that caused my death." And we will end the part 1 of What If Belle Was Betrayed and Met Alastor here, okay? So, have a good day, everyone, and I may be here tomorrow, though I might not be. I have somewhere to go tomorrow, so yeah, don't expect it. Expect to upload tomorrow. I'll try, though.